Hi, Brad.
Laura, nice to see you.
Lovely to see you. And for once, this is a session that I'm leading, which is...
I love it, right?
Yeah,
You've got the mic.
definitely. Thanks for kind of creating the space for me. I know that we've had many conversations before around this topic, and so you were, definitely on that short list for me to have more conversations with about this. For those that don't know, Global Wellbeing Week is running from the 21st to the 30th of June, and I had this idea that I wanted to talk with those that I know and care about well-being and how they experience that in their life, but also to help bring it to the forefront of people's minds, of those that are watching, and perhaps get them reflecting on well-being and how that is for them at the moment. So for those that haven't had the privilege of meeting you before, Brad, do you want to share a little bit about yourself?
Wow, yeah, thank you, Laura, and actually thank you for inviting me on, because in all the conversations we've had, and we've known each other for years, actually the most helpful ones are always around this topic, because you're my wellbeing mentor. So it's lovely to be part of this. So I live in the UK. For the last 25 years, I've lived and followed a more spiritual path in how I look at the world and live. And I also have a corporate responsibility and job where I run a coaching and leadership consulting firm that works globally, looking at leadership, coaching, and kind of the topics around inclusivity. So well-being is top of the list when it comes to any program with leaders. So it's very close to my heart.
So this next question then, Brad, this is going to be, I'm really interested in what your response is going to be. What does well-being mean to you? Because we can Google well-being and we can have a look, and it's vast, isn't it? Everyone's got their view dependent on the research or their area of specialism as to what well-being is. So what about you?
I see it in different facets. So I look at well-being completely holistically.
Okay.
And by the way, that sometimes makes it more complex to always get right, for me anyway. So I look at my spiritual well-being, I look at my physical well-being, I look at my mental well-being, I look at my holistic well-being. And I'm constantly trying to find ways to either connect with myself more, to make that space. I love that word. I wasn't always used to it, but now I really resonate with it, creating the space for a connection with myself, with the environment, and making time to connect with the environment, and also to connect with people, because I also look at my social well-being as well.
Okay.
And so I have these different facets, and I think what well-being means when I look holistically at it is I look at all of those elements and I think, well, how well am I being in those arenas? And it's the movable feast. I'll be completely straight. It's a movable feast. And I believe I look at some areas and I know that I feel well in those areas. And I look in others and I know I'm not as well as I am in the others. So more focus, more attention, more time can be spent there. So that's what well-being means to me, holistically and independently, the different elements.
And I think, first of all, Brad, I think what you said there will resonate with a lot of people. This idea of what was coming through here was that it's movable. We as humans are energy in motion, aren't we? There's nothing that is fixed. And you mentioned that there will be some areas that you feel well-being, and then other areas not so. And And I'm just curious, those areas that you feel, you know, that you've got right, or whatever the phrasing might be, do they tend to be the same areas, or do they fluctuate as well?
My instinct says they're the same, and I'm currently looking for evidence to prove they're not.
Right.
But I can't find any. So for me, my social well-being is permanently at the lower end of my list of where I focus my attention. So I can make connections with myself, with my environment, with my physical well-being, my spiritual well-being, and I don't spend enough. So my social well-being actually tends to be the one that doesn't feel well.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's probably the same. No, it's not probably. It's the same one.
Yeah.
It's the same one.
I wonder why you were looking for evidence suggesting
because it's not unknown. It's not unknown to me that I do enjoy solitude, and actually I get a lot of my energy, a lot of my well-being comes from quite insular meditative process the states. And I don't just mean sitting on the floor cross-legged and meditating. For me, going for a long walk in the forest with my dogs is meditative.
Yeah.
And it's something I might do on my own that might be 3 hours long, and I'm connecting with my environment, I'm connecting with myself, with my spirituality. But I'm doing it on my own. Now I also go for walks with others, but that's probably 10% of the time, and 90% of the time I make all of those connections with my well-being actually on my own. So I think that's what the message tells me there.
Yeah. So how about the last year? How has in relation to what you're sharing here about what well-being means to you, how has your well-being impacted, for the positive or negative, or neither? Months.
Do you know, a really interesting moment during the first lockdown was when it was highlighted to me that I was running for hours every day, and I got into this habit of at 4:30 at the end of a work day I would go for a run. 10k, 20k, didn't matter, just I would run. And I was like, why are you running so much? Like, what are you running from? The therapist in me says, right? Yeah. And I started to look at it, and actually my well-being was not good. Although I was one of the fortunate ones that was busy from morning till evening during the lockdown, work didn't stop. But actually my work was always going out with groups of people. I was always with people. And although on Zoom I was with people all day long, actually for me that physical connection is important. I learnt it. It was newer to me, feeling it. So I get my extroversion needs all met when I'm with other people. I don't have huge extroversion needs, so a lot of them are met by my work, meaning that in my personal life I'm much more private.
Yeah.
But I realized I wasn't well because I was masking my lack of wellness through my focus on my physical well-being.
Yeah.
Brad, you're working really hard, you're stuck at home, make sure you get out for that hour's exercise. And I live very rurally, so I could go for 2 hours and no one would notice. But actually I was focusing so much on my physical well-being. What was happening to my mental well-being? Actually, I'm sat in the same room for 15 hours a day, working, no view, no people. Actually, I had to stop and take stock. So that moment was a real eye-opener, and I can still remember I think it was Charlotte here who was here, and she said, you know, it was nice looking at the garden, seeing the colours changing as the flowers started to come out in springtime. She'd never noticed it. And I moved my office around so I could look out the window and my view became this bed of flowers and plants. And every day I would spend 2 or 3 minutes just looking. It was so quiet, it was so still. And it was when I started to get onto this idea of that actually tiny well-being practices can help with the balance. And what had happened to me, I think, on reflection was I had moved to a kind of extreme. So I thought I was doing myself really lots of good by running all that time. But what I wasn't doing was going home at the end of the day and saying, oh, I had a shit day.
Yeah.
And sharing it and having someone show compassion towards it. No, I was just running it off.
Yeah.
So physically I was in great shape, but mentally I wasn't. And I had to have it pointed out. And I spent time with the therapist and the coach and I didn't see it. So it's a great learning, a great reflection of the positive and the less so moments in that lockdown.
I wonder whether is there something here as well about needing to be open to receiving that information from, whether it was that it was pointed out to you or whether you saw it yourself, that openness, because we often have this blinkered approach, don't we? We're so kind of fixated on what we're doing, that we do have these blind spots.
Yeah, and it may be that. I wonder with myself if it wasn't so much that I wasn't open to it. Actually, I just needed someone to scream at me, what are you doing?
Oh, so sorry. What I meant, Brad, actually was that you were open to it, because
I see. Right. Okay. Yes.
To it, then you would not have taken that on board, because you would have thought, well, what's wrong with them? Do you know what I mean? I'm all right.
Right. Yeah. I'm going running. Stop hassling me. It's a good thing, right? I'm keeping fit. Yeah. I'm sure. I also know, Laura, and I think part of being well. And I sometimes wonder about the order, right? Well-being, work-life balance. Maybe it's life-work balance and it's being well. And when I think of me being well, in that moment when I was doing all that running, I wasn't well.
Yeah.
So I wonder if it's either that for me and for others, it might be that short, sharp truth where you have to be vulnerable enough to accept that kind of feedback, that reflective feedback or redirective feedback, whatever people call it. But also there's that acknowledgement that I've got to give to myself, which is, I know how I operate, I know how I work, I know who I speak to. I'm making choices all the time. So if ever I get to a point where I don't feel well, I can always trace it back to something I've done or I've chosen not to do for whatever reason. And I'm not curious about the reasons why I chose not to. It's more about, don't make that choice again.
Yeah.
Choose to be well. And I like what you said before, because it made me think, actually, if our eyes aren't open, we don't see it.
No.
And if our minds and our hearts aren't open, we can't receive it. So actually there's a real link to openness when it comes to this topic.
Yeah, definitely. So you've referenced the running and kind of the being outdoors, solitude, time with your gorgeous dog and dogs. What else contributes to you being a well-being? And I'm also wondering whether that has changed, because that's certainly something that I've found, is that what I needed or craved pre-lockdown changed during lockdown, and again it's evolving now. So I'm just curious from your perspective.
So I didn't adopt too many new habits during lockdown, but I did start to practice more what I had often used in the past in moments. So when I reference running, for me, that's part of how I view almost my mental strength, that long distance endurance. Knowing I can do those kinds of runs gives me that inner confidence to cope with certain things. But the daily practices that I've been building over a number of years that really helped during the lockdown. And when I wasn't doing it was when I didn't always feel so well, is daily 10-minute meditations before I start my day. My day starts really early, so I could be really tired before it. And what I've found from an energy point of view is on the mornings when I get up and I go into the room where I work and I just sit on the floor and meditate, sometimes with my Springer Spaniel sitting next to me with Rocky, and just 10 minutes. And I actually put an alarm on my phone for 10 minutes and just sit, and I'm quiet and I'm still. And I've been practicing with meditation for 6 or 7 years, and doing that was nice. And I introduced, after a shower, I would just lie in my towel and do some meditation, a guided meditation. So that was a new practice. And the stillness, daily stillness, is something that has helped me. And if I ever forget my daily stillness moments, I don't always feel as energized. And for me, every day, Laura, I'm always walking one of the dogs or both of the dogs between 6 and half 7. And doesn't matter what season or what day, I'm normally out with them. So on my phone, every day at 6:40, an alarm goes off that says it's time for your 2 minutes. And wherever I am, I stop what I'm doing, I stand completely still, I close my eyes, I dip my chin into my neck, I open my ears, and I start listening. And I start hearing everything. It's so cool. It starts with just normally one bird noise, and then you start to hear all the different birds and the leaves and the wind and the aeroplanes and the distant cars, and you start to hear noises and people speaking. There's so much. And this 2 minutes, the alarm will go again because it's all set to remind me to do it as a daily practice. And that 2 minutes of stillness, one, I feel great when I open my eyes. One, because the dogs are really happy that I'm back in play and they're all jumping around. More importantly, when I had really stressful moments with client work or with personal life, I could stop in any given situation, dip my chin into my neck, close my eyes, and for 2 minutes, be still. Yeah. I'm not thinking of anything, I'm just listening. And the connection I made was by opening up my ears and closing my eyes, I open my mind and my heart. And I absolutely believe that, because I start to think differently afterwards and I feel differently afterwards. And all I'm doing is shutting out all the distractions of the world, closing my eyes and having a listen. And it's very empowering. Personally, it feels empowering. And I'm sure I look ridiculous to people who might pass me in the fields or the parks as I stand there. No one's come up to me yet and asked me if I'm okay, but those daily practices, so meditation, guided or private, and stillness moments, they've been right through lockdown my most faithful helpers.
And when you were talking about meditation there, and that really resonates with me, the moments of mindfulness, the hitting the pause button and the taking the breath and the just kind of stopping the spinning of everything going on, and using our senses to not even necessarily quieten the mind, but it's refocusing, isn't it? And therefore attention is on something else other than what's on in our minds. And I think a lot of people who first, either they've not even practiced meditation, or they've heard about it, or they've tried it and it doesn't work for them. There's almost like this myth that the mind has to quiet and clear and still, and it's empty, and it's like, flipping out. I don't think anyone has ever achieved that. So I'm just curious about what triggered you to, you said you'd been meditating for 6, 7, however long years. What triggered you to choose that and explore that?
Actually, the story behind it I think is quite cute. I was part of a crystal learning circle back in the early noughties, and I spent 5 years actually working in the kind of the spiritual holistic field. And as part of that, we did some retreats with Buddhist monks who introduced me to Reiki, to crystal healings, and actually I became a therapeutic practitioner in crystal Reiki healing. And it was during that I was just taken to meditation centers and guided meditations. And it didn't actually resonate with me back then. I think what resonated with me later on is that I got that it wasn't about quietening the mind. So back then I was like, but I'm still thinking about stuff. And I can still see this young monk. He was like in his early 20s, and I can still remember he put his hand on my heart here, and he said, "Don't worry." That's all he said. So I was getting like really frustrated. I can't. And he just put his hand in. Don't worry. And he said it so slowly, and I just looked at him, and I felt instantly at peace. And I remember closing my eyes and thinking, I really enjoyed the next however long it lasted for. But it wasn't until I was doing ultra running that I started to meditate again, to like mentally start. So I got into it more for mental focus, actually, right, to be able to bring myself into like a zone, a focus zone. That's actually how that's how I got back into it.
Okay, so that all sounds wonderful. The strategies that you have in place, the moments of stillness, the being able to, no matter what you're doing, find that stillness. Let me just come back. Sleep. I'm curious about your sleep because you work internationally, globally, okay? And the hours that you pull in, not necessarily long days of course, but it's more about the 4 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, 2 o'clock in the morning, sometimes later on in the evening. So how do you take care of yourself from that perspective, that sleep, that rest?
Really, really poorly.
Okay, good.
Just really, I do as much as I can to eat the right stuff and move in the right way. Mm-hmm. And ever since I was a teenager, I even back then was living off 5 hours of sleep, even then, as an active teen. And yeah, Laura, there are times when actually if I finish work at 9:30 in the evening, I may or may not have had dinner, which is a good or not good thing, right? But even if I haven't, I can't just go to bed. Mm. So even if I'm getting up at 4:30 for a call in Asia, I can't just go to bed when I finish work. I need to chill a bit. I need to sit with the family or the dogs, go for a walk, whatever. I need that time to unwind. So actually it means I end up going to bed at 12:30. And actually that's not great. Or I actually start falling asleep earlier than that. Try and stay awake because I want some kind of life that isn't just built around a day of work. Yeah. And it's this vicious cycle. So actually the physical well-being is a real horrible juxtaposition of physical fitness, but not necessarily with the rest that's required to sustain it. And that's why historically I've always taken 6 weeks in the summer where I do very little work and just rest my whole being. And from mid-July to the end of August, I don't really move very much for business. It's downtime. But I've not yet found a path, in spite of growing a team of people who also do all the same things that I do, I haven't found a path to getting 7, hours sleep every night.
When you're on holiday, do you
All
find
day.
Okay, yeah.
All day. I can sleep all day. The fact that I want to do things gets in the way of me sleeping all day. Otherwise, I would sleep all day. That's why I sometimes miss like traveling for work, because so you've asked a couple of times, was it different in lockdown? Actually, my sleep is worse in lockdown, because when I'm traveling for work and I'm staying in a hotel in Germany for 2 days, actually after dinner with the client, go to bed. I don't have to walk the dogs that night or do their business at midnight. And there isn't a TV channel I particularly want to watch in RTL or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I go to bed and I put some music on at like 10 to 10. And I wake up in the morning, I feel amazing. I'm so refreshed and ready for the day. And it's a brilliant workshop, And then I fly home that night. And then I catch up on Sky Plus till 1 in the morning. And go to bed and get up at 6.
There's something about our habits and first of all, I just wanted to say there about the sleep. Something that I have found over the years quite frustrating about some, not all, advice is almost the expectation that we all live these lives where there aren't things that get in the way of our well-being.
Right.
I don't believe it's any benefit in telling somebody you need to get more sleep, because I think they know that, right?
Yeah, I know I need more sleep.
So it's how, I think a lot of the time it's how almost, how do we assess and acknowledge that this is where we are, and maybe that's okay, maybe it's not. Are we fighting ourselves? And what I like about what you're saying is that it's, and I know you've been working the business for many years, and so this isn't a new thing, but you have found a way that works for you. Not the best way, there would be other ways, but when you balance kind of goals and what we're wanting to achieve, and also looking at all of those different aspects of well-being, then for this period, you're making that work for you, and there's an acceptance there.
Yeah, and I think there's also a gratitude, because I do have the fortune of working for myself, so I can take time out and not have to ask permission or feel guilty that I'm letting someone down. And although, yes, I thank you for acknowledging I might work long hours or I might work hard. Actually, yes, but I also have downtime, and also at times when other people are working really hard. So it's a really hot sunny day, not today obviously, but earlier this week, well, I could have sat and worked for 6 hours, but actually I took the dogs out and we went and sat on the beach in Elstree, and in the reservoir, in the shade, running in and out the water, and I turned my phone off, out of office. And actually I could do that. I just jumped in the car and went. And 6 hours, and for me, actually, I might not get 7 hours sleep or 8 hours sleep, but if I get 2 hours out in nature, or you give me half an hour under a tree, that's like the equivalent of 3 hours sleep for me.
Yeah.
How I feel afterwards. And so I like your framing that actually I found a way that works for me. It might not be the best way, but it is a way that works and somehow is sustainable. But if I didn't have the nature, I would be in more trouble, I think, with my well-being.
Yeah.
I'm positive of that.
Okay, I'm conscious of the time, and I can't believe we've almost had half an hour already.
Wow, okay, cool.
I could speak for hours with you, and we probably will do another conversation, I'm sure, if you do that. But
no doubt.
The last question then, if if you had one piece of advice that you would share with somebody who is wanting to put more focus on their well-being, not necessarily somebody that doesn't focus on their well-being, it just might be, you know, some areas and aspects need their attention, what do you think might make the most difference?
Two things come to mind, Laura, if I could share both.
Yeah.
One is that 2 minutes of stillness. And I say it because not only do I know it for myself how it works, but having shared the principle of it on dozens of workshops in the last year to hundreds of people, the feedback back on people adopting that 2 minutes a day, just finding 2 minutes to stand outside and close their eyes and open their ears. Just that 2 minutes to find stillness in a world that demands action is precious, I believe, for my well-being. So I would definitely recommend that. And I'm also going to quote someone who I met through lockdown, a woman called Natalia Cohen, who rode the Pacific Ocean in a group of 4 females over 9 months. And she talked to me about the HEY model, H-E-Y. And in order for her to be well when she was 9 months at sea, she was constantly thinking about human connections, environmental connections, and you connections. And every day she tried to tick all 3 so that she made human connections and had meaningful conversations, that she observed and took moments to appreciate the environment that she was in, and that she took time for herself to acknowledge what she was doing, the hardships and the good bits. And when she told me the story of it, I thought, wow, imagine being out on the Pacific, seeing, you know, a half crescent moon, and that's your moment for yourself. Wow, that's, you know. But actually I started adopting it straight away. And I don't do it every day. I do it once a week. I check in on my HEY model. But 2 minutes of stillness and the HEY model have been super friendly to me the last 15 months.
I love that. And these are such simple strategies to adopt that take moments. And I think that's so important for people to recognize that the practices of well-being, they can be, you know, it's like when I go and have a chiropractic adjustment, really the physical adjustments can all happen in 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Just 5 minutes, that's all it takes. So, you know, noticing and having that intention of putting those practices in place, and I think, yeah, they sound that they could be really valuable for people.
That's the word though, isn't it? It's intentional attention. And that's the focus. Focus with intention is very powerful.
Yeah, absolutely.
Love it.
Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. Pleasure. You're quite natural at this.
Well, we may do it again.
With pleasure. Laura, thank you very much.
Thanks so much. Take care for now.
All right. Bye.
Bye.